this early on the podcast, continuing news and gaming, I never thought that I had to talk about this sad topic within the gaming industry itself. But this past weekend, I think that makes it worthy have a motivation on talking about my perspective being a pro physical medium. And yeah, I'm talking about Blu-rays, DVD, cartridges, everything that you can touch. There's something tangible, and there's something that you can have it like a library game of every or anything. And I think that I will see in this in a perspective of a gaming collector, which I am, since I have the notion of the world around me, and whenever I could hold a NES controller or the Nintendo Entertainment System, yeah, it's beautiful to see a library of game, but and I'm not trying to actually a recapitulation on where we came as we are today can be a nice new topic for exclusive YouTube video, but I'm gonna do the too long don't read version of it, and is that PC gaming saw the opportunity to actually sell games without having the process of having like the physical version. And strangely enough, PC gaming pre or mid 2000s and before was kind of the standard thing, or and the equivalence of what you call today a limited or special edition, or maybe a collector edition of a nowadays game, is actually the regular version of a PC gaming or physical PC gaming. I mean, even visiting electronic boutique, Babash, before GameStop took them over, it was nice to see the PC gaming version practically covering one third of the store or the location of the branch, if you will, about the electronic boutique, Babash, including Toys R Us also. Yeah, this kind of a boomerish recall. It is hard because I'm not trying to say, well, maybe I am a new neo boomer, but I'm a 80s baby, 90s kid, so practically I didn't see how the Nintendo Entertainment System saved the gaming industry after the video game crash, and maybe I haven't seen the first stretch of Nintendo taking over the video game side of things, but I do remember Nintendo having to compete with Sega. PC gaming wasn't like a niche, like a third alternative. It was just like a niche set of users that had the money to actually buy games, and there wasn't a need to have, or at least in certain point, there wasn't a need to have like a powerful computer, because computer was kind of a office thing from the 70s and 80s. In the 90s, there was kind of a influx of gaming within computers, which I think that I can highlight ID Software with Doom really raised the bar in the beginning of the 90s, and it was for the good for having PC gaming take a height. And then it came the generations that you call it nowadays GPU, the graphic cards. Back in the day, it was called 3D accelerators, and it was optional. It was not immediate need to have to play with high quality video games. So all this, it's about a topic that I shared on a subreddit that Reddit, and yes, I know that I'm trying to avoid Reddit because excuse me if you're a Reddit fan, but there hasn't been any opportunity, and no matter what the topic and what the subreddit is, that I can have like a healthy and civilized debate. Everything is unilateral, or you're right or you're wrong. There's no kind of a space of debating, so I didn't want to rise like you're right, you're wrong, typical scuffling, but it fascinated me when I raised about Xbox team that was in charge to highlight or made the accommodations for third party games and their own first party studio to have the physical version of Xbox Series X games, because the S doesn't have a Blu-ray reader or a Blu-ray drive, just the Xbox Series X. Uh, I was going, getting the typical answer PC has been doing this in the last 20 plus years. Why is this an issue now? And I just responded back that why something 20 plus years has to be a normal thing. And my perspective about the implicit disappearance of physical versions, it's about making value for your money, making your money feels valuated. I remember back in the day, and yes, I understand that the inflation is a factor, that nowadays gaming is kind of more cheaper than the 90s. The problem with that sentiment is that at least in the 90s, you have a really big detailed box with a big detailed art, a lot of booklets, a booklet that gives you the perspective if you're into the game store or history or storyline, and you have a good quality of ads that you will only get it for free if you buy gaming magazines and entertainment, Game the Monthly, Game Pro. That's all that comes in my mind right now. And all those kind of things that you were included during the 90s and early 2000s games, nowadays it's all part of a limited exclusives or even collector's edition. Is the equivalent of what you get with a standard edition back in the days in the 90s. And I refuse that this could be a normal thing. Maybe I went too hard when I said that people that doesn't have this as a concern, maybe they are kind of a yes gamer. And on the other hand, I think that this is what I believe it is happening. The gaming industry just make some gamers to accept it or accept it, not another alternative. And yeah, there's the stand. That is what is called standard limited collector's edition. This is kind of the other reply that I get when I mention things like that. But I mean, if we are going to take the example of Metal Gear Solid Delta 3, Metal Gear Delta, oh my god, Metal Gear Delta Snake Eaters collector's edition for our market. It's just a patch that it's not the first time that Konami hand out patches for both Metal Gear Solid, at least 3, Peace Walker, and 5, which are based on the main Naked Snake, Punish Venom Snake storyline. But you got a diorama and you need to build the diorama yourself. Meanwhile, the Eastern version or Japanese version of the collector's edition, it gives you like a figurine of Naked Snake at the equivalent of the first of the same price of $199.99 without counting taxes, shipping, and everything. Okay, and let's get real. Gaming as a hobby, gaming as fandom, and gaming as collecting was never a cheap culture. It was never meant to be, or at least it was never seen that it is a cheaper hobby. Associate everything you want with cheap. It ain't cheap. Gaming, it ain't cheap. I understand that you don't make companies to give out games, or in the case of gaming industry, you don't give out games for free because you have to employ people and you need to make incomes. I'm not against that. What am I really against is that the notion that companies were making games as an art first, revenue second, got twisted to the point that all companies are for revenue. And I think the sentiment that the main audience for gaming are kind of a yes gamer because they allowed this is what I meant on things that you can vote with your wallet. I'm not saying that I'm going to vote not buying games because that will be a complete hypocrite thing to do because I invest in PC gaming, which again, since the mid 2000s and forward, it's really strange to hear somebody saying, I got a physical version of a game, and only collectors or people interested on having like a physical thing might have the audacity to do so. And I might get the point that, hey, there are companies like Limited Run Games, PMP, 8-Bit. Yeah, kind of they kind of have like a balance on trying to have physical mediums despite the industry moving on all digitals, which gives me to the other side of the coin. Or if you flip the coin, it's all about gaming preservations and what's going to happen when a physical medium when far from its physical life. Because yes, DVDs, CDs can get uh, it can get rotten, especially if you're living in areas where there's too much heat most time of the year. And limited run games really appeals to what could have been a great success launch of a game that doesn't have a normal physical versions. Companies like them do the physical versions. I'm not against gaming preservation. At the contrary, I do want people keep playing and remembering where nowadays games came from. And the only way to do that is to actually give it the original release, which is something that I can't think of anybody else like outside GOG with their preservation program, which kind of collide with my notion that physical medium doesn't need to disappear. But I guess that the counterpoint of the physical medium disappearing and there's nothing much that we can do about it is then supporting people like PMP, 8-Bit, Little Bit Wrong Games, and then GOG if there isn't any plausible way to get a physical version of classic retro gaming. To me, it's kind of a sad. It's kind of a sad the acceptance that we are seeing that the physical medium is disappearing. Until last generation, my champion was Nintendo, because with Nintendo you could see the difference. And I'm gonna close this topic with how much the PC and the console aspect of gaming, or that line that defined a difference between those two, got blurred. But I'm going for Nintendo first. Nintendo Switch was kind of a inflection point on the debate on why Microsoft and Sony, respectively with the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, the physical versions, most of them were just Blu-ray that had like a 100 to 500 megabyte of data, which was just included the license. And that's another aspect about the dangers of physical medium disappearing. Sony hasn't been shy on closing out digital store without giving something tangible for anything that you have paid. And I'm talking about not only the PlayStation TV service, but the PlayStation video service that some games like Batman Arkham's Asylum included the Batman Year One animated movie, and it was so incredible that Sony ignored all the pleas for having kind of a compensation, and a few years later we got Crunchyroll taking over Funimation, and I remember some friends saying, well, what about all the content that I paid on Funimation that are not available at Crunchyroll? The sentiment was that it will arrive on the service, but you're not getting anything back, not even the equivalent of what could have been the monthly fee that Crunchyroll charged. Nothing. So the perspective of, because that's what's another thing that I got answered back is that, what about when PlayStation, Xbox, or insert your platform decides to invalidate your license? There's nothing you can do about it, even with physical medium games. But at least the physical mediums allows you to have the game not reinstall it, that you can play it back, but it at least it gives you some sort of a connection with the server that grants you the game, versus in a unilateral way, a platform denying you a content that you paid for. Even if it's a license, you pay for the license, you are entitled to be either granted some access or get your money back. And that's something that Google's didn't want to play with Stadia. Yeah, Stadia was a failure, and this is another topic for another episode. But in my opinion, it fails day one having Phil Harrison as VP of Google Stadia. But besides not granting refunds if you buy the Stadia Founders Edition in the pop-ups Google Store in the New York airport and Best Buy, everything else Google just refunded it. One of the main key problems was that Google refunded with the payment method. So some people got into some trouble, like I did, because one of the payment method that I use on some games wasn't in existence anymore, and yes, I'm talking about credit card. And while it helped me to clear the debt that I had with that closed credit card, I did want to have the money back. Also, I made the mistake of using Google Play points for actually buying Stadia games or Stadia access to game. Let's talk with property here. But the fact remains that Google Stadia did its job. Google did its job like it was to do. Sony has this tenacity going so against consumers so bad that it really does give positive points on why being pro physical medium is not being wrong, and it's not being like someone who's trapped in the past. It's all about you being a consumer and being respected as a consumer. Now, I mentioned about the blur between PC and console, and I think this all started with the 7th generation of video game console with the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, and the Nintendo Wii. In reality, until the original Xbox, PlayStation 2, and the Nintendo GameCube, you didn't need to install anything. You didn't need to wait for patch 1 games. And in some point in the early years of at least the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, you didn't need it to also install the game. Yes, you needed to install updates. A console needed an update. Yes, I was part of those people back in the 2006 where everything began with this 7th generation. It was weird seeing update in a console. Yes, PlayStation 3 allowed you to install Windows and any Linux distribution back in the day, but it was weird reading the word updating in a console. That this tackles when a game came half baked and there was nothing you can do about it unless you return the game from PlayStation 2, original Xbox, GameCube backwards. That is one thing. But to me, it makes the separation line between PC gaming and console gaming completely blur. And nowadays, I found it really, really invisible if there is a line.